Ariel, listen to me. The human world, it's a mess. Life under the sea is better than anything they got up there.
Come on, you unfortunate soul! Go ahead! Make your choice!
You know, maybe this is not what the song meant, but the human world does look like a mess when compared to the cartoon with all the musical fish. Ah yes, the wait is over and one of the most talked about movies is finally part of our world. I know that statement may sound debatable, but it most certainly feels that way. Considering that the original 1989 film is one of the most celebrated Disney movies of all time, and played a key role in not just starting the Disney Renaissance, but also a new age of animation that flourished the medium into the billion-dollar industry that it is today, I'm certain that millions of people were eagerly awaiting for this updated take on Ariel's adventure for varying reasons. And believe me when I say that those reasons really did vary. There were some who were hyped to see a new version of the story that they fell in love with, or have even grown up with all their lives. Others dreaded how this would turn out, considering the poor unfortunate reputation that these Disney live-action remakes gathered over the years. And some dove deep into some wild territories where things got controversial real quick, like the existence of a black Ariel. And trust me, I will talk about this, and I will be merciless. But regardless of what the discussions may be, the fact that this was highly talked about for years makes this movie a big deal. And I know that as a Disney fan myself, I gotta see what the commotion was all about.
I'm a dead crab.
Let's be honest, we all know that this was going to happen, rather if you like it or not. I mean, The Little Mermaid is among the biggest movies during the Disney Renaissance era, and all the other big ones like Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and Aladdin all got their own live-action remake. And not only that, but each of those films managed to make over $1 billion at the box office. So at that point, why not just go and add Ariel into that club too? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Oh, I know that you're all ready to give me that list of what could. Especially the biggest complaint of these live-action remakes that they copy the exact same plot of the original without giving us anything new that is either of value or enhances the experience. And let's face it, many were expecting those results with The Little Mermaid. I will say now that, after watching it, the story is the same for the most part. Yes, a lot of it is the same narrative that's been told in the original picture. But the key difference, and the reason why this is over 2 hours, is regarding the love story. If there's one thing that the animated film is criticized for, is how the love plotline is said to be rushed. That it's one of those Disney films that enforces the idea of love at first sight, and the connection between Ariel and Eric feels shallow and unrealistic. I'm surprised to say that this movie tried to fix that, and it honestly works. One advantage that the remake has is that it takes the time to develop the love story in a genuine and believable way. After all, Ariel's biggest goal is to be with Prince Eric, so the film takes the time needed to let audiences get familiar with both characters individually to connect with them emotionally. Thus, you end up more engaged to want to see them together in the end. The film even provided both a good update where their love comes from their similarity of having a caged life. How they're both royalties who feel restricted by their parents and want to break free to see more of what the world offers. It's funny how, in a film with mermaids and talking sea creatures, it's the human aspect and the bond between two young lovers is what carries the picture, and it does so in a way that I'll give that is impressive.
Say you gotta kiss the girl. You gotta kiss the girl.
However, this is not to say that they improved the whole story of Disney's The Little Mermaid. Yes, it managed to get the heart correctly, and I do applaud it for that. But the writing itself to bring the animated feature into live action seemed like a messy process. I'd even say that the more it tries to be like the original, the worse the experience becomes. The biggest problem there is how a lot of the dialogue is just exposition. You hardly get a genuine sense of who these characters are when they unnaturally talk for the purpose of cramming in as much context as possible. On top of scenes that don't have as much impact because they feel like unenthusiastic reenactments of what the original did, and when it tries to add something new like the context of Ursula being Triton's sister, they provide nothing of value to the plot itself. Not to mention how there's a bit of a disconnect between the fantasy and the love angle. While the romance tries to be more realistic and down to earth, it could sometimes get interrupted by these out-of-place CG characters trying to liven up the scene. Almost like while they were trying to develop the bond between Ariel and Eric, the movie just remembered, oh yeah, this is a Little Mermaid remake. Let's bring in those animals and give them an unexpected rap number.
Remember the swamp? Remember my song in the swamp when I was like, whap, chicka, whap, whap, chicka, whap.
Speaking of which, as one of the original songwriters, Alan Menken, returned for the remake, along with the assistance of Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think that the movie's music is one of its pros. Not its biggest strength, but it did manage to make the experience better. This is the most apparent in the score, where it feels bolder and grander to fit the big-budget blockbuster tone. It doesn't overshadow what was done in the animated film, but rather it feels like a tribute to the movie's music, as if it pays respects to its source material. As for the songs, I think it's safe to say that they are the highlights of the picture the same way they were in the animated film. That's where the cinematography, the music, and the performers are at their best to capture the same power that the original held, on top of making the most out of the actors' singing abilities. I cannot say the same for any of the new songs, though. Look, I love Lin-Manuel Miranda and what he's done over the years, but the additions he wrote for the picture aren't as memorable as the classics, especially when their tone feel more different than the ones written by Menken and Howard Ashman, like Wild Uncharted Waters, For the First Time, and then there's the Scuttlebutt that will make you wish that they played the song from Kingdom Hearts 2 instead.
They're trying to blow up the pigeons, but those are just urban legends. I know a lot of really fat pigeons.
Reliving the story and the musical numbers in a modern way is one thing, and could arguably be a big part as to what fuels these live-action remakes. But another reason as to why this one in particular was so highly anticipated was because of all the actors that would portray these beloved characters. So, with that said, do they actually do justice to who they portray? That depends. Amongst everything featured in this remake, the one who makes this distinguishable from all the other Little Mermaid adaptations is its leading actress, Halle Bailey as Ariel. And before I talk about her performance, I have to bring up this discourse because this has been going on since it was first announced that a black actress would play the mermaid. You know what's the biggest problem with Ariel's casting here? It's not Halle Bailey that's the issue, it's all those sociopathic right-wing trolls who can never shut up about the color of her skin. Let's start off by stating the fact that the subject of Ariel's skin color is such a non-issue. In fact, anything that they complain about being woke is never a real problem. I mean, in an age where people are struggling with real-world issues like inflation, diseases, human rights violations, and more, the only thing that these far-right influencers do is obsessively complain about the most white-privileged first-world quote-unquote problems that never actually harmed anyone, like Ariel's skin color in the Disney remake, which emphasizes how people who have a hatred for anything that they consider woke are both worthless to their community and neglectful of their own families. Guess they can never prove themselves to be a resourceful human being when they constantly throw a temper tantrum anytime they see two fictional people of the same sex hold hands and be happy. And considering that there have already been several women of color who played Ariel in other major Disney productions, having a black Ariel makes no difference because the character's skin color is irrelevant to who she is. It's the biggest proof that antagonizing the film or the casting by calling it woke is just a racist action. In fact, using the word woke as a derogatory term and opposing values of diversity and tolerance is racist. Over the years, it's evidently clear that the far right keeps repeating the word as a dog whistle in order to enable hate speech and white supremacist beliefs to radicalize their audience to become far right extremists and go fuel the leading cause of violent crimes. And with how these people encourage dangerous behaviors like promoting hate speech and engage in targeted harassment with their code words, it highlights to why social media like YouTube should take more action against hate speech like mass reporting and deplatform channels that continuously attack what they call woke culture. Or at least take away their monetization, considering that no one should ever make a living off of breaking some of those websites' community guidelines. Also, isn't it ironic that despite their nationalism preventing them from becoming real men, these guys are so obsessed with their masculinity, yet they spend too much of their time whining about things that manly people would generally have no interest in, like Disney princesses. And yet, how they can never stop talking about anything and everything they hate shows how anti-woke people are mentally unhealthy. Instead of spending actual time to just talk about things that they unironically enjoy, or actually doing those things while minding their own business, they have this constant anger where everything they do must be an action that hurts who they view as their enemy. As if they are so miserable in their own lives that the only way that they can be happy is to make others more miserable than them. So not only does anyone with a hatred for woke culture as an unhinged bigot, but they also have clear personal and emotional problems that they refuse to stabilize due to their dangerous political values. So if Halle Bailey's Ariel makes you upset because you're not smart enough to look beyond the color of her skin, you don't need a platform, you need a doctor.
Oh, I think I speak for everyone when I say that needed to be said. And that all those racists need to know their place and shut up.
Seriously, all that outrage for what? Just who played Ariel in the live-action remake? Seriously, all those people need to know what real problems are, and they should have some dead in their lives. Oh, speaking of which, I think choosing Halle Bailey to play as Ariel is actually a good decision. I won't say that her acting is the best thing here, but she did decently well with her performance. Of course, the reason why she got the part is her singing, and she nailed her musical moments like Part of Your World. That alone justified the casting, and the power and emotion she brings to those songs will make fans feel satisfied with the treatment she gives to her version.
Up where they run, up where they stay all day in the sun.
However, I'd also say that playing Ariel may be more of a challenge for Bailey than she bargained for. You see, Ariel requires more than just having a good voice. You also need to master pantomime acting so that she clearly expresses herself through her movements and facial reactions. Considering how she is incapable of talking for a good portion of the story, she has to compensate by being livelier with her expressions during her time on land with Eric. That's why I'd argue that one of the greatest actors who played Ariel is animator Glenn Keane. Please don't take that out of context. In the case of Halle Bailey, though, I'll give her that her performance does feel more human than Emma Watson or Elle Fanning, and when she talks, she's fine, but when Ursula took her voice, her acting could have been more beneficial if she was more expressive. Again, she's the right choice to play Ariel, but if she played it up a bit more, she would have been perfect.
Something about you seems different. I can't quite figure it out.
She got legs, you idiot.
As for the other actors, I'd say it's a decent mix where the acting can range from being okay to meh. On average, they are passable, but there are a few that I think are standouts alongside Bailey. I was surprised to find that I liked Jonah Hauer-King as Eric, giving this good contrast to Ariel as someone dealing with the same problems but on land. And his down-to-earth approach adds to the connection as it blooms between the two. He did well to boost up the character. And maybe this is a hot take, but there was one person who I was excited to see the most in this, and I'm so glad she delivered. And that is Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. Honestly, she's the true standout star in all this. I'd even say she's one of the best things to come out of a Disney live-action remake. Despite the tedious writing for her that's mostly exposition, she nailed Ursula's glamorous, short-tempered personality, and McCarthy's personal flair actually fits well with who the Sea Witch is. If there are times that I can guarantee that you'll have fun, It's definitely with her scenes, or better yet, her number with Poor Unfortunate Soul.
This one longing to be thinner, that one wants to get the girl, and do I help him? Yes, indeed.
But then you have who I'd argue to be the weakest characters, Ariel's buddies Flounder, Sebastian, and Scuttle. With the exception of Jacob Tremblay, I am not a fan of the voice acting in this. I like these two actors, but Awkwafina's comedy can feel too forced at times, and Daveed Diggs' Jamaican accent sounds distractingly phony. But what really drags them down is the CG of the characters. As a Disney live-action remake, this shares the same problem as the other remakes where they take cartoon characters, make them look as realistic as possible, but still treat them like cartoon characters, creating this weird disconnect that makes them look disturbingly uncanny. How can you try to sell me that this is the same gang I loved in the animated film when the CG versions show as much emotions as someone with a Botox obsession? And now Ariel's friends have been reduced to a clueless-looking Luca fish, a crazy-eyed Sisu bird, and a Thomas Jefferson crab who I'm sure will come visit me in my nightmares.
You don't have the votes.
You don't have the votes.
But this isn't just an issue with those particular characters. The same can be said with the CG in general. The visual effects bite so much more than they could chew in order to create the undersea world. As much as they tried to be as detailed and realistic as possible, it's not polished enough to look legitimately convincing, and it still lets out that sense that it's all fake. It's not the technology or the artists who are at fault here, it's the direction of trying to capture hyperrealism in a Little Mermaid movie. It's as if I'm watching Finding Nemo, except the animation is trying to tell me that the fish are meant to look as real as if this is all live action. Then again, the visuals do have their good points too. The animals may not look great, but the backgrounds are very nice, and there are places that do capture the same look as the original, but now grand and in 3D like Ariel's Grotto. That, and this is a colorful picture. The designs may be unappealing, but it is very pretty to see all the vibrant colors used to make this picture look alive, especially during the underwater scenes. And I'll even say that despite their flaws, the visuals are at their best during the musical numbers, where they burst out the most colors and really put on a show to make the moments feel spectacular. Even Under the Sea almost feels like something out of Fantasia.
Right here on the ocean floor, such wonderful things surround you. What more is you looking for?
You know, I'll admit that I did come into this with low expectations. Considering the last live-action remakes that I went through, I just entered into it with a let's just get this over with attitude just for the sake of making this review that you see here. However, after I came out of it, after I watched the movie in its entirety, I can honestly say that I don't hate it. I mean, I'm not going to go and call this a really good movie, but honestly, it's not bad. Is this movie anywhere near as good as the 1989 film? Absolutely not. However, this is also not the disaster that some may expect. For what it did on its own, like I said, it's not bad. The 2023 live-action remake of The Little Mermaid is one of the more competent Disney live-action remakes. It is around what you'd expect from a big-budgeted Hollywood remake, but by its own standards, it was able to deliver some better quality entertainment compared to something like Beauty and the Beast, Maleficent, or Pinocchio. It still has plenty of problems that prevents this from being an admirable picture, like the cringy CG, annoying and uncanny animal characters, and the writing was poorly handled when it comes to adapting the animated feature, but it does have enough qualities to stand on its own thanks to the help of some solid performances, strong music, and a surprisingly well-crafted romance. Would I recommend people to go and watch this? That honestly depends on how you feel about the film beforehand. If you're interested to see how they updated The Little Mermaid and want to check out how Halle Bailey and Melissa McCarthy play as those popular characters, then I think you'll be pleased with what Disney created. If you never cared about this movie before, then you may not care much about it. But I will say that it is harmless if you do end up seeing it. By the way, now's a good time to remind you to like this review and subscribe to my channel. Live subscribe to here is better than anything they got up there. This is technically one of the better Disney live-action remakes out there, but that's really not saying much, and it's only better by a slight margin. That's why I'm giving this a 6.5 out of 10. The movie certainly doesn't deserve the hate campaign that it got, but I still prefer the animated version because it has one character that the remake excluded for being too much of a powerful force.
Les poissons, les poissons.